Hello, BookTube. As you may know, I am one of the co-hosts of an event in November on BookTube called New Worlds November. It's in its second year. It was created by the Bookish Bryants to celebrate science fiction. Our focus this year, as last year, is shorter science fiction. So novels of fewer than 200 pages, short stories, novellas, that sort of thing. But really, it's an event for any science fiction fan. And any science fiction will do. And I've been reading a lot of science fiction in November. I've also, because of NaNoWriMo, been writing science fiction in November. And the month is still young. But in addition to my co-hosts, who love science fiction and read a lot of it, there's also an untapped hidden kingdom of science fiction only channels out there. Science fiction fantasy channels out there, or channels that concentrate on science fiction and fantasy and don't seem to interact at all with the rest of BookTube, except for David Wiley. He is the ambassador Sarek, their liaison with the rest of us, but the channels are wonderful. And one such channel, I noticed, one such channel is called Back Away from the Donkey. He has, I think, fewer than 50 subscribers. It'd be nice if he could have 100 subscribers. Now, wouldn't it? This week, it'd be nice if we got to 100 subscribers. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. I'm not sure that he would agree that his channel is only science fiction and fantasy, but the two best things about his channel, are, aside from how friendly he is that he's read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and virtually every one of his videos features the happy pantings of a dog in the background. So you almost never see the dog, but you certainly hear the dog and the squeaky toys and the happy, which is really nice. Music to my ears. Anyway. And I'll leave a link to his channel down below. He did a video, had a wonderful idea for a video, that was looking at the Gollancz science fiction Masterwork series. Where was I? I'm not going to scream over background noise, but I'm also not going to do take 21 of this video. So I have to have the windows open. It's too hot to close them. So I'll just pause to let the apocalypse go by. He had an idea on his channel that was wonderful. There's a playlist on his channel so that you can watch one video every day. He made a series that looked at the Gollancz series of science fiction Masterworks. That a lot of you, I've seen a lot of you hold up these books. I've heard a lot of you mention them. They are exquisite, a very good list with wonderful cover art, original cover art for all of these great works. They also do a list for fantasy. He looked at that list and did a series on his channel of books that he thought should be on that list and weren't. And it was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I loved it. He picked for his first one, True Names by Vernor Vinge. Then, as is true when you do a list like this, the person who makes the list is going to name things that you're going to immediately say, oh yeah, I agree, that should be on the list. But the person is also inevitably going to put something on their list where you just say, what? Are you crazy? And I love that. I love that about these kinds of lists. And the second day of his feature, he nominated The War Against the Jator by David Gerald. David Gerald should not be on any Masterworks list of any kind whatsoever. And The War Against the Jator is... I was yelling at the screen in the best, most friendly way possible, in a way that you will probably do in this video. But he also nominated On the Beach by Neville Shute, which was made into a Once Upon a Time, a famous movie. It's a post-apocalyptic story about a group of people awaiting the end of the world on the tip of Australia. They know that the Earth's air currents, there's been a nuclear holocaust, and they know that Earth's air currents are eventually going to bring that fallout to them. There's nothing they can do about it. And it's really effective on an elementary level. It's not effective on any other level because Neville Shute is not all that good a writer. But it has a memorable effect. You will remember the novel for a long time once you've read it. So I like the idea of including it in the Sci-Fi Masterwork series. He also includes The Web Between Worlds by Charles Sheffield. I've watched a lot of these science fiction preponderant channels. I have a feeling they may be the tip of the iceberg. There may be a whole sprawling alternate civilization of science fiction channels that I have yet to explore completely. I've watched a lot of these channels, though I haven't seen Sheffield's name come up much. I don't know why that is. I don't know how in print he is. He's completely, resoundingly out of print in America. I don't know what that would be in the UK. And it's been forever since I read The Web Between Worlds. It's been forever since I read that, so that would be kind of fun. I need to read it more recently to know whether I would agree that it should be on a list. Then again, another feature of these kinds of lists is that the person making the list will almost certainly name something that you're not familiar with. And that was true on Back Away from the Donkey. He mentions Memoirs of a Spacewoman by Naomi Mitchison, which I have never read. And it must have meat on its bones if he's not only bringing it up, but suggesting that it belongs on a Masterworks list. So I need to find a copy and give it a try. And then his last two choices were, I thought, a little bit on the wobbly side, which is, well, the first one was The Best of Frederick Brown, mainly looking at that old Del Rey mass market paperback series of Best Of that had dozens of titles in it. Frederick Brown is only a hair's breadth different from David Gerald in that neither one of them belongs on a Masterworks list. But that Best Of volume, which is what Back Away from the Donkey actually nominates. He's not nominating Frederick Brown, he's nominating that volume. And that volume is really, really well done. If you're going to read any Frederick Brown, it should definitely be the Best of Frederick Brown that is long since out of print, but I'm sure you can get it for $1 on eBay. And the same thing with his last suggestion. His last suggestion is Lost Dorsai by Gordon Dickson, which is set in Dickson, what later became known as his child cycle, which is a future human civilization in which humans have gone to various different worlds and become very splintered societies, not different species, but very specialized enclave societies, depending on what the natural resources of their world or their society have to offer to the other worlds in trade. And one of the worlds in that future conglomeration is the Dorsai, which is a hard, unforgiving world that doesn't have much in the way of resources to export except its own people. And so over generations of training and discipline, its young men and women have become the greatest warriors in the galaxy. And they ship out as mercenary troops, as troop commanders, battle strategists, security details to the other worlds. That's how they support the economy of their poor little rocky world. And Lost Dorsai, the novella that is the title story of this book, is what happens. It meditates on what happens if you get a Dorsai who is a pacifist. So it's really, really intriguing, as you'll see from one of the lists on one of the entries on my own list. But naturally, I had to make my own list. Naturally, I did. A list like this, you can't not do that. I'm hoping that all the rest of you science fiction people do likewise. I'm hoping very much that you do. I want to give you a list of 7 of my own choices, as if I had done a corresponding video for every one of the videos on Back Away from the Donkey. And we'll start with an author who I don't like. I would never nominate otherwise. I think this novel is exceptional. The author is K.W. Jeter, and the book is Farewell Horizontal, and it takes place mostly on the sides of a gigantic skyscraper. A skyscraper so big that its sides become a world unto themselves, a world where you can hunt and work and love and fight, hence the title of the book. And I think the idea and the execution work a lot better than anything this author ever did. So that's going to be my first nomination. And then my second one will be a book that has cropped up on this channel a number of times. A lot of science fiction has cropped up on this channel. I have been reading it and loving it for a very, very long time. It'd be nice if I also enjoyed ambassador status with this Wondagore of splintered channels. We'll have to see. Maybe I can gain their trust, Jane Goodall style, slowly acclimating them to my presence. But this next one I have mentioned many times before. This is Intervention by Julian May. Pardon the incredibly ugly cover. Julian May wrote a series of books called the Pliesian Exile series, taking place in a future Earth in which humans have developed psionic abilities and joined a intergalactic federation of species. So the humans are enjoying a wonderful, blissful future. And in the Pliesian Exile series, some ragtag group of humans, for various reasons, decide that they don't want to live in that society anymore and are willing to risk taking a time travel trip to the Pliesian era of Earth, which is full of giant prehistoric animals. There are no humans yet. It's a wild, wild world, and it's a one-way trip. There's no way back from this time portal. And what that group of humans that goes through that portal doesn't realize, and which no human realizes, is that millions of years ago, a couple of alien species crash landed on Earth and have been systematically enslaving every human that comes through that portal until our heroes show up and disrupt the whole pattern. But intervention takes place generations before that cycle and is a standalone novel about Earth in the early 20th century in working-class small-town New Hampshire, when those psionic abilities are still completely unknown. They are mostly folkloric, but they are starting to develop in serious amounts that cannot be ignored by the humans in the various groups on Earth that develop these powers, and that can't be ignored anymore by the observing aliens who've been watching Earth for quite some time. And it's amazing. It so perfectly blends the workaday world of the normal human characters and this growing science fiction element in their midst that I don't know of a better standalone novel by this author. I wouldn't nominate any of the Pliocene books for the SF Masterworks, but I would recommend this. Then we'll move on to another author who's he's close to being... He's close to being my own David Gerald. He's written a lot, I think too much. But when he's good, he's really good. And the author is Alan Dean Foster. And this is an early book of his. I could have picked Kiran Yaga, but I picked an early book, Nor Crystal Tears, which is a first contact novel between humans and an insectoid species, obviously, from that glorious cover. But it's told from the point of view of the insectoid species. And it's heartfelt and really good. This author had a sort of a glowing period for a little while there, about 170 years ago. This book came out of that period. Also, the origin story of Pippin Flinks, his beloved boy and his dragon combo. We in a novel called For Love of Mother Not, we get their origin story, how they met, all that sort of thing. And it's, despite the fact that it's technically a prequel, it's really well done. Far better done than any other Pippin Flinks novel, even though I love them all. This was also around the same time period that this author came out with two great short story collections, With Friends Like These and Who Needs Enemies, that barely have a bad story in them. This author has written a lot of stuff that I thought could have stayed in the oven a lot longer, but foremost among things that really work is this. So, Alan Dean Foster for the list. Then, again, this is sort of a fun exercise. We're not talking about real world stuff here. I don't know when or how, under what circumstances an author is approached to have a work on the SF Masterwork series. Certainly there's an element of wondering whether or not a book has been tested by time. So my next item here will probably never get on the list, or at least not for a long time, because it's relatively new. It came out just a couple of years ago. I think I reviewed it. But I think by common consent, I doubt that any of these insular science fiction only channels that I talk about would have a differing opinion on its greatness. I think it is widely regarded as a great work of contemporary science fiction. It's C. Robert Cargill's book, Sea of Rust, set in a future world in which one scrappy, no pun intended, robot is fighting against the machine, again, no pun intended. There's a gigantic combine, again, no pun intended, that sort of runs the AI and robotic world of this future world. And there's a robot who would rather not be co-opted by them. And it's beautifully eloquent. It's just wonderfully told. So I would put this on that list. I don't know if the author will ever get the invite, but I would definitely want to see it. And then, although I would hate to see the cover art replaced here. It looks like the SF Masterworks replaces almost all cover art. They didn't do it for Gateway by Fred Pohl. They gussied up the original, I think it was Darrow K. Sweet cover that he had for Gateway, but they didn't change it. I don't know if maybe they would for this, but my next choice echoes Back Away from the Donkey, but not explicitly. He put Lost Orsai on his list, and the novella Lost Orsai is very compelling, but it's a mishmash of a book. Whereas in the child cycle, Dickson did write a book that was whole unto itself and that I thought was immensely powerful. And it's this, Soldier Ask Not. This is a novel in which a character named Tam Olin is driven by, just obsessed with grief and the desire for revenge. So much so that it gives him an almost supernatural power to coerce all the worlds, plural. This gives you a one very angry man's tour of all of those splinter societies, that, including the Dorsai and the Exotics and a whole bunch of other splinter groups, so that you get a tour of Dickson's world in the fullest way that he ever fleshed it out, and a compelling personal drama. I'm not Soldier Ass. No, I'm not Lost Dorsai. I would recommend this for the SF Masterworks list. Then another book. This has been mentioned on my channel many times because, again, despite the fact that these science fiction channels don't associate with me, we are akin. I have been reading science fiction and talking about it and loving it for a long, long time, longer than a lot of the people in that little Wundagore hidden kingdom have been alive. And I've mentioned this book many, many times on this channel. It's Startide Rising by David Brin, which likewise takes place in a future in which humans have joined a confederacy of more advanced and older alien species. One of the ways that you get admission to that advanced group is by uplifting so-called lesser species on your homeworld. Now, naturally, I have a whole bunch of objections to that. There are no lesser species. But in the context of the book, it's that humans genetically engineer dolphins and chimpanzees to give them greater vocal ability, greater conceptual intelligence. They harness them with, give them mechanical harnesses for arms and whatnot, that sort of thing. And that future society in which humans are a very junior partner is a very settled order. It's a very settled place. Everybody knows their place. But a recent archaeological find, a corpse, looks like it could upend a lot of that settled order. And the human, dolphin, chimp crew of a starship that finds that cadaver suddenly finds themselves hunted by a lot of much more powerful and older alien species who don't want that corpse to become known. They don't want anyone to know about the corpse in the cargo hold. And they chase this starship, and finally it takes refuge on a desolate world of highly mineral water. At least it's water, so the dolphins can maneuver freely. And the planet that they end up on, seemingly accidentally, has secrets of its own that may or may not be connected to the corpse in the cargo bay. And it's all wonderfully, beautifully done. The world building is so elaborately beautiful that, well, this won every award there was to win when it came out, but it's been strangely neglected by the science fiction world since then. And I don't really understand that. I would hate to see the SF Masterworks series redo this cover art. This was the cover art that I found. I found this thing on a metal spinner rack at a drugstore and thought, oh, that looks interesting. I had no idea how good it was going to be. I read it and thought, that's going to win every award the industry has to offer. I would hate to see this cover art go, but it probably would. And then we'll finish up with another science fiction author I've praised many times on this channel, but I've praised him for one particular short story, not for a novel. The author is Howard Waldrop, and this is his novel, Them Bones. I've praised this author for his short story, The Ugly Chickens, which I think is great. This is a full-length novel about a character who steps through a portal into a very, very alternate reality and doesn't know if he can ever make it back or how to make sense of that reality. And it's really, really good. This author is just really, really good. There's virtually nothing that he wrote that I don't love. And this novel is the only one of his longer works, longer novellas or whatnot, that I think really stands the test of rereadings. I would love to see this author get the love of the SF Masterworks series. That would be so great. And that is it. That is my list of 7 of these things, and a fairly apocalyptic visual video of its own. There's nothing I can do about that. It's boiling hot here, so I can't close the windows. So I'm sorry about the backlighting, sorry about the noise, sorry about the noise, sorry about the noise. I was expecting that by early November I would be able to film videos with windows closed to cut down on the apocalypse outside my window. But no, no, not in our current century, no. So those are 7 items that I would like to see added to the SF Masterworks list. And now I would like to hear what you would add to that list. Feel free to come up with 7 of your own. Try to look at the list first. There are many, complete listings online. so that you don't duplicate a book that's already on that list. And then fire away. I would love to see what you do. And I will leave a link to Back Away from the Donkey in case you feel like going over and subscribing. And also to hear his thoughts on the books that he lists. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up before there's another siren. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.